Race. Biological differences among people, skin color, facial features, stature, and the like that are transmitted from generation to generation. Ethnicity. Shared historical experiences as well as unique organizational, behavioral, and cultural characteristics. Subpopulation. Smaller than a population, bigger than a group, individuals in a society that can be distinguished by their history as well as their distinctive behavior, organization, culture, and perhaps superficial biological features. Ethnic group. Subpopulation of individuals who are labeled and categorized by the general population and often by the members of the group itself as being of a particular type of ethnicity. Discrimination. Process by which an individual, group, or subpopulation of individuals acts in ways that deny another individual, group, or subpopulation access to valued resources. Ethnic discrimination. Process by which the members of a more powerful and dominant ethnic subpopulation deny the members of another, less powerful and subordinate ethnic subpopulation full access to valued resources, such as jobs, income, health, prestige, power, or anything else that the members of a society value. Reverse discrimination. Used to emphasize that programs designed to overcome the effects of past discrimination against members of a subordinate subpopulation often deny some members of the dominant subpopulation equal access to values resources. Genocide. Members of an ethnic subpopulation are killed or, potentially, an entire ethnic group is exterminated. Ex-Nazi death camps with gas chambers, exposure of Native Americans to diseases. Ethnic cleansing. Systematic attempts to eliminate an ethnic or religious group from a society. Attempts by the Serbs to cleanse the former Yugoslavia of Muslims and ethnic Albanians. Expulsion. The act of exiling members of an ethnic subpopulation from a country can take the form of direct coercion or can be a direct, common form of discrimination, somewhat less intense form of discrimination because those exiled from society still retain their lives. Segregation. Process of spatially isolating members of an ethnic subpopulation in areas where they cannot have the same access to valued resources as do people who are not isolated. Exclusion. Pattern of discrimination that denies members of an ethnic group certain positions independent of the effects of segregation. Selective inclusion. Process of allowing members of ethnic subpopulations into certain positions while at the same time excluding them from other positions. Abusive practices. Patterns of action against the victims of discrimination by members of other ethnic groups in, particularly by those charged with enforcement of law. Practices may be intentional, but often environmental racism. Dumping of toxic wastes in neighborhoods inhabited by poor and relatively powerless ethnic groups. Waste disposal sites are generally located in poor and minority neighborhoods. Racial profiling. Law enforcement agencies' use of ethnic markers to assess the likelihood of crime. The result is that members of particular ethnic populations are likely to be singled out for special surveillance and harassment by police officers. Institutionalized discrimination. Discrimination that exists when cultural values, beliefs, laws, and norms allow acts by individuals to deny others access to valued resources. These acts or practices are part of the way a social structure normally operates and are pervasive and persistent features of interaction between people. Ethnic stratification. Resource shares. Amount, level, and type of resource an ethnic subpopulation typically receives consistent and persistent amount of valued resources available to an ethnic subpopulation. Prejudice. Set of beliefs and stereotypes about a category of people. Ethnic prejudices. Beliefs and stereotypes about designated subpopulations who share certain identifying characteristics, biological, behavioral, organizational, or cultural, or at least perceived to share these identifying characteristics. All-weather liberals. People who are not prejudices and do not discriminate. Reluctant liberals. People who are unprejudiced but will discriminate when it is in their interest to do so. Timid bigots. People who are prejudiced but afraid to show it. Active bigots. people who are prejudiced and quite willing to discriminate. Passive acceptance. If the power of an ethnic group is small and the magnitude of the discrimination is great, members of the group may have no choice but to accept the discrimination. Sometimes passive acceptance is really active manipulation of a situation. Marginal participation. Participation by subordinate ethnic subpopulations in a niche where their creative resources allow them to prosper tends to be most successful when the minority population is small and does not enter areas dominated by the majority. Assimilation. The process by which the members of an ethnic group become part of the broader culture and society, losing their distinctive character. Self-segregation enables the population to create and support their own communities, businesses, schools, leadership, churches, and other social forums. Early Black Muslim movement in America advocated a separate African American community, self-supporting and isolated from white institutions. Rebellion. A response to discrimination in which minorities strike back at the majority and vent their frustrations. At times, rebellions become extremely violent, mobilizing people for mass killings. Organized protests. Broad-based, concerted efforts to change patterns of discrimination. Ethnogenesis. The process of creating a distinctive ethnicity as a means of adapting to discrimination, even as some degree of assimilation occurs. Minority group. An ethnic subpopulation in a society subject to discrimination by members of more powerful ethnic subpopulations. Accommodation stage of assimilation. According to Robert Park, the stage of assimilation in which immigrants and their descendants are forced to change and adapt to their new environment. During this unstable stage, there is some degree of stabilization of relations between immigrants and those in the host society, even if this accommodation forces migrants into lower social strata. Assimilation theories. Theories that conceptualize ethnic relations as a process of interpenetration and fusion in which persons and groups acquire the memories, sentiments, and attitudes of other groups, and by sharing their experience and history, are incorporated with them into a common cultural life. Attitude-receptional assimilation. The lack of prejudicial attitudes and stereotyping on the part of both dominant and migrant ethnic groups. Behavioral reception assimilation. the absence of intentional discrimination by dominant ethnicity groups against subordinate ethnic groups. Biological theories. Theories that emphasize the biological underpinnings of ethnicity. Sociobiological theories of ethnicity assume that social structures are merely survival machines that exist to maintain the fitness of genes. Thus, ethnicity represents a reproductive strategy for maximizing fitness beyond the narrower confines of kinship. Caste system. A system of rigid social stratification based on hereditary status, endogamy, and social barriers, sanctioned by custom, law, or religion. Caste theories. Civic assimilation. The reduction of conflict between ethnic groups over basic values and access to political arena. Colonialism theories. Theories drawing inspiration from the analysis of the dynamics of past European colonialism to analyze the process in which one population controls the political and economic activities of colonization complex. Robert Blauner identified four components of the dynamics of colonization: forced entry into a territory and its population, alteration or destruction of the indigenous culture and patterns of social organization, domination of the indigenous population by representatives of the invading society, justification of such activities with highly prejudicial racist beliefs and stereotypes. Competitive phase of assimilation. According to Robert Park, the stage of assimilation in which ethnic populations compete over resources, cultural assimilation. Assimilation that occurs when the values, beliefs, dogmas, ideologies, language, and other systems of symbols of the dominant culture are adopted. Egalitarianism. American core values stressing that people should be treated equally and given equal opportunities. Entrepreneurial resources. The occupational skills, education, money, and organizational abilities that an ethnic population possesses. Equality of results. A situation in which differences among a group of individuals have been eliminated in order to create a more level playing field. Ethne. A cluster of kinship circles created by endogamy and territoriality. External colonialism. The process by which one nation controls the political and economic activities of another, less developed and less powerful society. Human ecology theories. Theories that stress the forces of competition, selection, and speciation of distinctive ethnic groupings. They emphasize that living patterns in urban areas are produced by competition for scarce resources, escalating the level of conflict between ethnic subpopulations and thus force ethnic groups into segregation, housing niches, and a narrow range of economic positions. Humanitarianism. The cultural value that people who have suffered through no fault of their own should be helped. Identifiability. The degree to which the members of a subpopulation are visible and readily identifiable. The more distinctive the members of a subpopulation are, the more likely they are to become targets of discrimination. Identification. Assimilation. Assimilation that occurs when individuals no longer see themselves as distinctive and, like members of dominant groups, stake their personal identities on participation and success in the mainstream institutions of a society. Individualism. American core values stressing that people get ahead through their own efforts and hard work. Internal colonialism. Theory that views the history of ethnic relations in America as involving the establishment of internal colonies of people who are not white and who are dominant by descendants of the original Anglo-Saxon Protestant colonists. The motivation behind internal colonialism in the U.S. was twofold. The need for cheap labor to increase profit, desire to take and control land, first from the Native Americans and later from the Mexicans. Kin selection. The concept that family structure or strategy allowing males and females to maximize their fitness by keeping as much of their genetic material as possible in the gene pool. Marital assimilation. Assimilation that occurs when there are high rates of intermarriage between immigrants and dominant ethnic groups. Middleman minority theories. Middleman minorities. Members of an ethnic subpopulation who have middle or moderate levels of resources and service. Distribution links between producers and buyers of goods. Negative beliefs. Codified negative portrayal of the perceived and desirable characteristics and qualities of a subordinate ethnic subpopulation. Pluralism theories. Theories stressing the maintenance of distinctive cultural, organizational, and behavioral characteristics. The maintenance of a distinct ethnic identity provides sources of support and guidance in a sometimes hostile world and is thus a way of coping with discrimination. When ethnic identity is nurtured, a pluralistic and permanent mosaic of ethnic subpopulations becomes evident. Reciprocal altruism. The idea that people offer assistance to non-kin because they know that at some future time their acts of altruism will be reciprocated by those they help. Such reciprocity promotes fitness and thereby enables individuals to keep their genetic material in the gene pool. Sense of threat. If a subordinate ethnic group is perceived as threatening the political power, the economic well-being, the cultural symbols, the social structures, and/or the basic institutions of a dominant ethnic group, this perception will translate into hostility, fueling the fires of social identity theory. The sense of identity that comes from seeing oneself as a member of a distinctive social category. That involves a set of cognitions, emotions, and evaluations by virtue of being a member of this category. When viewing self in a category, individuals employ the prototype of beliefs, rules, and behaviors that marks them as members of this category and distinguishes them from members of other social categories. Split class theories. Theories arguing that the upper classes economically exploit the lower classes added to this class dynamics in capitalist society is the recognition that there are splits within each class along ethnic lines. Members of some ethnic subpopulations are subordinate within a class and are often relegated to the less desirable, lower-paying, and less secure jobs within this class. Split labor market theories. Stratification theories. Theories that emphasize how the process of discrimination produces the overrepresentation of members of ethnic subpopulations in various social classes. These theories place considerable emphasis of the mobilization of power in order to control where ethnic groups are placed in the class system. Structural assimilation. Assimilation that occurs when migrant ethnic groups become members of the primary groups within dominant ethnic subpopulations, their families, close friends, cliques within clubs, and groups within organizations.